All right, so we're going to look at test 9 from Khan Academy. I'm going to go through this quickly, so if you need to pause or rewind or anything, feel free to do so. First question, it looks like a system, so we're going to look at this. It says, what is the value of x plus y? So this is a pretty typical question. So you're going to find x and find y and then add them together. So I'm just going to go ahead and solve this system by elimination. I think is probably the easiest way if I'm looking at this. I could solve for x or solve for y and use substitution. This one's actually... you got a little bit of freedom to do that. But I'm going to cancel out the y's by multiplying the top equation by 2. So my new equations look like 4x minus 2y equals 16, and then x plus 2y equals 4. I get 5x equals 20, and x is 4. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to find y. I'm going to use either of the equations. I'll use the x plus 2y equals 4 equation. So then 4 plus 2 times 4, so 2y equals 0, or then y equals 0. So I got 0 and 4. If I sum those together, that'd be 4. Next question, number 2, which of the following is equivalent to that? So this is requiring you to distribute, combine like terms. This is a great question using your Algebra 1 skills. So I got 2x squared minus 2x plus 3x squared minus 3x. And I just combine my like terms, so I see that I got like terms of x squared, like terms of x. So that gives me 5x squared when I combine the x squareds, then I get negative 5x when I combine the x's. So that would be A. On to number 3. Which of the following statements is true about the graph of the equation 2y minus 3x equals negative 4 in the xy plane? So this one is asking you about slope and y-intercept. So look at the choices. It's trying to get you a feel for what you're trying to answer here. So the way to figure out about slope and y-intercept is to solve for y to get it into slope-intercept form, right? So I got y equals 3 over 2x minus 2. So I got a positive slope and a negative y-intercept. So let's look for that. So positive slope, positive. So positive slope, negative y-intercept is what I got. Again, the slope here is the number with x. The y-intercept, b, is the number by itself, the constant, negative 2 in this case. 4, the front of a roller coaster car is at the bottom of a hill and is 15 feet above the ground. If the front of the roller coaster car rises at a constant rate of 8 feet per second, which of the following equations gives the height h in feet of the front of the roller coaster car s seconds after it starts up the hill? Okay, so you got a roller coaster car down here, and I'm drawing it, sort of helps me, I don't know. But if this is 15 feet off the ground, and then it starts rising at 8 feet per second. So just kind of diagramming out what's going on here. I could kind of get an equation by saying, well, it's going to be 15 feet, and then the height is going to add 8 feet every second, right? So A is going to be my answer, because if I go 1 second, it's going to be 15 plus 8, right? If I go 2 seconds, it's going to be 15 plus 16, right? So that's going to be 2 times 8. So I keep going from there. And so that was first page. So on to number 5. We got this equation, C equals 75H plus 125, so let's read and see what that means. So the equation above gives the amount C in dollars an electrician charges for a job that takes H hours. Ms. Sanchez and Mr. Rowland each hired this electrician. The electrician worked 2 hours longer on Ms. Sanchez's job than on Mr. Rowland's job. How much more did the electrician charge Ms. Sanchez than Mr. Rowland? So this is just a reading comprehension question, really, because you can see from the equation, the part of the equation that's changing is that $75 each hour, right? So if I'm talking about 2 hours longer on Ms. Sanchez's job, then that electrician is going to charge $150 more for the work that they did on Ms. Sanchez's job. All right, question 6. You got a circle. You got a geometry question. Okay, so it says the circle above has a center O, the length of arc ADC. So let's highlight that. ADC is this arc here, is 5 pi. This is an x is 100. I'm going to just kind of label that inside. X is 100 degrees. What is the length of arc ABC? So highlight that and say, okay, the length of arc ABC. So that's like the rest of the circle. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking if that angle is 100, right? I know that half the circle is 180. I know the whole circle is 360. So I'm thinking like 360 minus 100 is going to be what's left in terms of like that central angle. So I'm going to label that 260. So now I'm going to set up a proportion, right? So I'm thinking like, well, that red arc is much bigger than 5 pi, right? I'm thinking it's more than twice as big. So I'm thinking like, I'm probably going to, looking at the choices, I'm like, I'm probably going to eliminate 9 pi. 13 pi over 2 is 6.5 pi. So I'm like, it looks like it's more than twice as big, right? And I know that it's more than twice as big because 260 is more than twice as big as 100, right? Twice as big as 100 is 200. I know it's 260, so it's a little bit bigger. So I kind of can narrow my choices down, even if geometry is not my thing. But let's do the proportion. So I got 100 out of relates to 260, just like 5 pi relates to, let's just label it arc ABC, right? So let's do the proportion. I'm going to reduce 100 over 260 because I don't have a calculator, right? I don't want to multiply 260 by 5 if I can avoid that. So I could take, it looks like I could take a 10 out, and then you could look at the 10 over 26, and that could reduce by taking a 2 out, right? And then, so that's 5 over 13 equals 5 pi over arc ABC. So now I got 5 times 13, a little more manageable. That's 65 pi. And then 5 times arc ABC, right? So I'm going to divide by 5. And I got arc ABC equals 13 pi, right? So 65 divided by 5 is 13. So it kind of works out. Yeah, you could have probably done a little bit of work in this part where you can just kind of divide both of these by 5 and got to the point there. But either way, you get 13 pi equals ABC is going to be B. Next one is 7, and this is just an equation. It's a little bit of a weird one, but I got 8 over x equals 160. So to solve that, you multiply both sides by x, and then to find x, you divide by 160. So looking at this problem, x equals 8 over 160, which is a decimal. I don't have a calculator, but if you look at the choices, you're like, it can only be D, right? There's no other option there. So if you reduced, looks like you could take a 8 out of each, you get 1 over 20, and 1/20th is 0.05. So, all right, so on to number 8. It says in the equation above, A is a constant. If no value of x satisfies the equation, what's the value of A? So just thinking about this, no value of x satisfies the equation. To me, that's saying that this equation has no solution, right? So recall what it means when an equation has no solution, right? So when an equation has no solution, the x's cancel, and you end up with a false statement, right? So let me give you an example. So for example, if I take like 2x plus 10 equals 2x minus 1, right? I'm going to try to find x, but oops, they cancel, and I end up with this false statement. So this would be a situation where the answer would be no solution. So I'm trying to see if that, like, what makes that happen here, right? So if I take 2ax minus 15 equals, I'm just going to distribute before I rewrite it. So 3x plus 15, 5 in there, get 5x minus 5 plus 5x minus 5. So again, 2ax minus 15. I'm going to combine like terms. I get 8x plus 10. And now I'm looking at this, and I know I could see that if the x's were going to cancel, that 2a would have to be equal to 8. So let's see how to make that happen. 2a equals 8 if a equals 4. So that's my answer, 4. That would make there'd be no solution because the x's would cancel. And then you'd end up with negative 15 equals 10, which we know is false. All right, on to number 9. It says a system of 3 equations is graphed in the xy plane. How many solutions does the system have? This is kind of a tricky one. We usually work with systems of 2 equations. If you have 3 equations, so 2 equations, you're looking for where those graphs intersect. 3 equations, you're looking for where all 3 intersect, right? So the only place where all 3 of these graphs intersect is right here. So the answer to the question is there's only one place where all 3 graphs intersect. I could see that 2 graphs intersect here, 2 of the graphs intersect here. The only place that all 3 intersect is at that point. It looks like negative 1, 3, but it doesn't really matter where the point is. The question was just how many solutions. 1 is the answer. Number 10, the equation above is true for all x where a and b are constants. What's the value of a times b? So this is a question where I gotta multiply these out, and I gotta kind of compare it to that other side to find a and b. So let's do it. So the easiest way to multiply a binomial times a trinomial is probably taking you back to algebra 1, maybe a little bit of algebra 2. But the way we call it, like either the area model or the box method or Punnett squares or whatever your teacher tells you, but I'm going to write the binomial along the left vertically, ax and 3, and then 5x squared minus bx plus 4. And now I'm going to multiply row times column. So I'm going to multiply ax times 5x squared put it here, ax times negative bx, put it here, and then I'm going to compare everything over here. I'm going to see what I end up with and compare it to the equation on the other side, the expression on the other side, to see what I can set equal. So let's do this. So I got ax times 5x squared is 5ax cubed. Ax times negative bx is negative abx squared. Ax times 4 is 4ax. All right, on the bottom I got 5x squared times 3 is 15x squared. 3 times negative bx is negative 3bx. And then 3 times 4 is 12. So I'm going to rewrite this. I actually got like terms. Let me highlight them. I got like terms of x squareds here. And I got like terms of x's here. And I'm going to rewrite this just to see what compares. And I'm just kind of going through this as fast as I can. I can't think of an easier way to do this. But so I'm going to take and call this, I know this is going to be a little bit confusing, but I'm going to call this x squared times 15 minus ab. So what I did there is I took these two terms and I factored out an x squared. Right? So my x squared term is 15 minus ab as my coefficient. I could rewrite that in front if you want, just to make it easier, but I just can show I took out that x squared. I'm going to do the same for x's. I'm going to rewrite that as x times negative 3b plus 4a. And then lastly, I got 12. So now I'm going to compare this with what we have up here, which is 20x cubed minus 9x squared minus 2x plus 12. So this is kind of a heavy question. I'm trying to figure out what a times b is. So if I'm looking at this problem, I'm trying to see, okay, so I got negative 9. I think the key to this problem is not finding AB, just like looking here, and I can see I got 15 minus A times B is going to equal negative 9. So that's the trick there, because all I really need is what is A times B. So I know 15 minus the thing I want equals negative 9. So if I could subtract 15 from both sides, I get negative AB equals negative 24, which means that AB equals 24. And I know that was like a tricky question. I had to like multiply to figure this out, but the trick ended up being right here, where I can set this equal to 9 and find what A times B is. All right, on to number 11. I got a proportion which of the following represents all possible values of x that satisfy the equation above. So I'm just going to try to solve this proportion. Cross multiply, I get 2x squared minus 6x. Cross multiply, I get 2x. So 2x squared minus, and I subtract 2x over, minus 8x equals 0. So this is a question, it's not a factor. I don't have to do MAF. I could just take out a GCF here, in this case 2x. So x equals 0 or x equals 4. So I'm looking at the choice and I'm looking at the expression, and both of those choices work. So 0 and 4 would be my answer. All right, on to number 12, and these problems get harder as they go. So this is probably going to be a little harder than question 1 was, but hopefully still doable. So I'm going to see which of these expressions is the same. In order to do that, in order to add these together, I need them to have the same denominator, right? Rational expressions, fractions are kind of like fractions. So I'm going to put 5 as 5 over 1, and to make the denominators the same, real simple, I'll multiply top and bottom by 2x plus 1. And I got 1 over 2x plus 1 plus 10x plus 5. I just distribute over 2x plus 1. Now since the denominators are the same, I can add these. So I get 10x plus 6 over 2x plus 1, and I can see that's the answer right there, D. All right, on to number 13. All right, so says the graph of the function f in the xy plane is a parabola. Which of the following defines f? This is a little bit of a remembering vertex form. So if you remember vertex form of a parabola, vertex form is called vertex form because the vertex is right there. So in this form, the vertex is HK. So if I look at these choices, I should be able to, because these are all vertex form, so I should be able to pull out the vertex. So the vertex of A, choice A, I'm not even looking at the graph, but the vertex of choice A is 3, 1. The vertex of choice B is negative 3, 1. Vertex of choice C is 3, 1, and the vertex of choice D is negative 3, 1. So I look over here and I can see, yeah, the vertex is 3, 1. So right away, I should be able to go 50-50, right? Even if I'm just guessing, it's a 50-50 shot. And actually, I should be able to know at this point, because I could take either of these points to see if they work in the equation. So let's just see if they work. So let's take A for instance. I got 4x minus 3 squared plus 1 is the equation. So we'll change it to y. So let's take the point 2, 5 and check it, right? So if that point is a solution, right, then I got 4, and I get 4 times negative 1 squared, says 4 times 1, says 4 plus 1, so that's 5 equals 5, so it checks out, right? If I tried to plug that into C, I would find that that doesn't check out, right? You could plug in 2, and that doesn't equal 5. So the answer is going to be A. And if you remember your parabolas, it's a good question to sort of refresh your vertex form of a parabola. Will help you get that one right. All right, on to number 14 is a system of inequalities. So let's look and see which one is the solution. So y is greater than x plus 2. So looking at the greater than or equal to, all of the equations look like they're graphed the same. So the question is just about the shading, right? So this one is just like, which way do you shade, right? So the way that you want to shade is dependent upon the testing. So if I can look at y greater than x plus 2, I like to use 0, 0 as my test point. Another thing you could do is you're going to shade above that line. So I'm going to graph all these lines blue just so you can remember, you can all see which graph is which. So I'm going to graph all these ones red. So because the second equation is standard form, right, I'm going to just use my test point. So 0, 0. So the question would be, do I shade on the side of 0, 0, or do I not? So if I take y, let me use blue for that equation. So I take y is greater than or equal to x plus 2, and I plug in 0, 0. So the question is 0 greater than 2 is no. So what that tells me is I'm going to shade on the side. So 0, 0 being right here, I'm going to shade where 0, 0 is not for the blue graph. So for the blue graph, I'm going to shade above it. So if I could just draw what it should look like over here, I got my blue graph sort of looks like this. So I should shade above the blue graph like that. I also got I got 2x plus 3y is less than 6. So I got 2x plus 3y is less than or equal to 6. I'm going to use 0. And when I plug 0 in on the left side, it's just going to equal 0, 0 is going to be 0. 0 is less than 6. That is true. So for the red graph, which sort of looks like this, I'm going to shade below it. I'm going to shade on the side that 0, 0 is. So then for the solution, I'm looking for a graph that's got this part here shaded, and that would be B. So it's kind of like go through the steps. Take your time with that one, especially since I think you guys have a feeling for how to shade. So just take your time so you don't mess that one up. All that one is asking you is like which one is shaded correctly, essentially. 15, what is the set of all solutions of the equations? This is the last of the multiple choice questions. So what is the set of all solutions to the equation that? So this is looking like a kind of a trick question, simply because you can't get a negative when you square root something. So there's really nothing I could plug in that's going to give me negative unless it's negative. So let's see if we can figure this one out. So if the x is negative, then I might have a negative and a negative equaling a positive. So let's see what we can do. So let's just try to solve this one and see if I have any extraneous solutions. So the way that you solve a radical expression, at first, my first guess was like D, but I'm like, wait a sec, it's probably a little more complicated than that. It wouldn't just ask me like a trick question for the hardest multiple choice question. So if I square both sides, I get x plus 2 equals x squared. So then I get x squared minus x minus 2. And then I can solve this equation. I get x equals 2 or negative 1. So I got to check it. Are both of those solutions? Is 2 a solution? So does 2 plus 2 equal negative 2? So square root of 4 equal negative 2? No. So 2 is actually an extraneous solution. So when it doesn't work out, where you get a negative, we call that extraneous. You probably remember that from Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. Let's check negative 1, though. So on the other hand, does negative 1 plus 2 equal negative 1? And yeah, I think this one is actually going to work The square root of -1, square root of 1 is 1. Is 1 equal 1? Yes. So the solution set is just -1. This is the only non-extraneous solution, so that was 15. All right, so number 16 starts the grid-in answers. And these ones, the nice thing about 16 is it's relatively speaking easier than 15, right? So the multiple choice goes from 1 to 15, and then gets relatively harder as it goes, 1 being easier than 15. 16 sort of starts over. So this one says, what is the volume in cubic centimeters of a right rectangular prism that has a length of 4 centimeters, a width of 9 centimeters, and a height of 10 centimeters? So this one, pretty simple. If you just remember, if it's just a rectangular prism, 4 by 9 by 10, you just multiply the three numbers together. If you need the formula sheet, here you go, right? So I'm going to be using this formula right here for a rectangular prism right there. I know that doesn't say it's a rectangular prism, but there's always going to be one problem that's going to kind of reference the formula sheet that's on that first page. So I just kind of copied it into this just to show you, but this is on the first page of all your SATs. So you can bank on one question being from the formula sheet, but this one's just a length times width times height. And I don't have a calculator, so I got to kind of take my time a little bit, but yeah, it's going to be 4 times 9 times 10. So that's 36 times 10, or 360. And then it's going to be centimeters cubed, but you don't do units, so you're just bubbling 360. All right, number 17, 4x plus 2 equals 4. If x simplifies the equation above, what's the value of 2x plus 1? So again, we haven't seen this. This one typically shows up on multiple choice, but on the grid-in, this should be pretty doable. So solve for x, but the question wasn't what is x. So don't bubble in a half. The question is what is 2x plus 1 equal? So 2 times a half plus 1 is going to be the answer 2. So the answer to 17 is 2. All right, on to 18. You got this kind of bouncy graph going. It says the figure above shows a complete graph of the function f in the xy plane. The function g not shown is defined by g of x as f of x plus 6. What is the maximum value of the function g? So this is kind of a transformation question. You'll see one of these on every SAT. So I've been doing SATs, I've been practicing these tests, and I keep seeing these questions that ask you, how does that change the graph? So this shifts the whole thing up 6, right? That plus 6, if you remember transformations. So if the maximum of f, right, so the max of f is what? So looking at the graph, I'm like, the maximum value of f looks like its highest point, right, would be 2. So if the maximum value of g would have to be this whole graph shifted up 6, so that would make the max value of g would equal 2 plus 6, right? So that's 8. So the answer would be 8, or 6 more than the max of f, which would be 2. All right, on to 19. So here's like the only trig question we've seen, and it's a pretty easy one in terms of what it's asking you trig-wise. But let's remember SOHCAHTOA. Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So this one tells us that the sine of r is 4/5. I'm going to graph PQR, Q being here. And then it says the sine of r, I could have drawn r on the bottom, but it doesn't really matter. The sine of r is opposite over hypotenuse, I'm sorry. So the sine is opposite 4 over hypotenuse 5. And I can see already that this is going to be 3 because it's a 3, 4, 5. So 3, 4, 5 right triangle, that's a pretty common one. Remember 3, 4, 5, remember 6, 8, 10, which is just 3, 4, 5 times 2, 3 times 2, 4 times 2, 5 times 2. Another popular one is 5, 12, 13. If you see a Pythagorean theorem on a SAT, you're probably going to see a triple. That's pretty common. So just be ready for that. Anyway, sine up being opposite over hypotenuse is 4/5. Finding the missing side. So another question is, what is the tan of P? So P is right here. The tan is the opposite over adjacent. So that's 3/4. All right, number 20. Says the graph of the linear function f is shown in the xy plane. The graph of the linear function g is not shown. Is perpendicular to the graph of f and passes through the point 1, 3. What is the value of g of 0? All right, so let's try to do this by just graphing it. So there's a couple things here. It's perpendicular, so immediately I'm thinking opposite reciprocal slope. All right, it's something you know about perpendicular lines. The slope of this line is -2. So I'm thinking about a slope of a perpendicular line would be +1/2. And the other bit of information is the perpendicular line G passes through 1, 3. So I'm going to plot 1, 3. That's right here. So it gives you that starting point, and then it gives you the slope, right? So slope being 1 over 2. I'm just going to graph up 1 over 2 and just kind of look at it, see what it looks like. And if I graph this, it looks pretty darn perpendicular. What I'm looking for is that like they make perfect t, and I'm pretty confident that that is the equation. So then the question is, what is g of 0? So another way to say that is, what is y when x equals 0? So for the blue graph that I just drew, the y value when x equals 0 looks like about 2.5. So I'm gonna, if I'm pressed for time, I'm gonna write answer 2.5. Call it 5 over 2, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's a couple ways to write it. You could write it as a fraction 5 over 2, write it as a fraction 2.5. If you had some time, you wanted to confirm this, you can find the equation of a line that has a slope of 1/2, and it goes through the point 1, 3. So I would do point slope form. So I'm just going to go through this. I know this is probably, it's good review either way. So I add 3, so I get y equals 1/2 x. 1/2 plus 3 is plus 2.5. And again, now g of 0, what is y when x is 0? That would be 2.5. So I just kind of confirmed what I looked at in the graph, just with a little bit of finding the equation of the perpendicular line. So hopefully this helps. Again, if you went too fast, go back, watch it again. You can feel free to ask me questions too on that Google Classroom.